Next image. And I'll go to the digital. Digital modeling happens in the second semester, where they learn Rhino. Our students are learning Rhino. They are also in the Rhino. When they learn Rhino, they're not allowed to cut dynamic plans or sections. They can't have the computer produce their plans and sections. So for a full year, we want to keep them drawing, doing their orthographic drawings in their minds, understanding that fully before they fall into that sort of lazy behavior, quite frankly. The way we do 3 disciplines, it's modeled after architecture, certainly in the studio environment because we have dedicated studios. We have the primary studios and the support classes, the tech classes, the software classes, the history and theory classes that support those studio classes. As in an architecture program, you may have, a number of structures classes, you have materials and methods, etc. We stick it all into one. We do that. In landscape, we do the same thing. So here's students on a landscape trip next image. In the landscape tech and the interior tech and the architecture tech, they go on field trips, they look at stuff. Next. For landscape, the students are looking at plants, they're looking at water, grading, site engineering, cut and fill. They do all that stuff in one class. We look at materials and methods and technical issues to empower design, right, at the level of schematic design, which is what we do. So have credible schematic design. Next image. So then they do landscape projects. They have their landscape tech class in the fall semester of sophomore year, then they do a landscape project. In this case, this was for a huge site by actually SIAR. Have you heard of Southern Cal? Of course, Southern Cal. They have the big railroad building. So that year the students did a huge next image landscape project, the detail of that, the things representing water and plant materials. Next. This was a nice project, a lot for a bus stop. Actually, the landscape was a shelter. So the site, the grass itself was raised up. So we have multi-level landscape and provide shelter for a bus stop. Next. This was an interesting project by one of our really, really sharp students. David Orkin was very good. He graduated in 2003. If anybody knows Peter Eisenman's Holocaust Memorial in Europe, David did this in 2003, okay? And Eisenman did his, which was very similar. Many years later, I don't think he saw it, but David's idea was these different plant materials would be as artificial as these building components that actually had cutouts for seating. Next. And he specified plant materials because he had his landscape tech class prior to that. Next. Another landscape project. This is for a site in Venice. The students are learning rhinoceros, and it's very clear in this one. There's a lot of contouring surface modeling for this particular project. So this student, Joan Sanis, who's just entering Columbia right now, he proposed this park that had very urban gritty materials. So it's blacktop, asphalt, rubber, and beach grasses. Next. In interior tech, we do interior tech the same as the other tech classes. We look at casework, cabinetry, doors, windows. We go on field trips. This is a great field. This is like the perfect example of interior architecture. This is Albert Fry's house in Palm Springs. Has anybody heard of that? He's a well-known modern architect. This is his own house. It's 15 feet wide. That's the bedroom back there, behind the rock. The site rock is actually in the space. These are all custom components, custom storage, and the bed that you can't see beyond. Next image. Turning the corner. Next image. Looking back at the space. It's only 15 feet wide. So how do you make a space that's maybe 40 feet long, 15 feet wide? How do you make it a bedroom, a living room, and a studio all together? You don't do it with furniture. So that's a good, in our disciplines of architectural landscape materials, we address casework, architectural cabinetry, and this is taking architectural cabinetry, not like, well, like the Otis entry. It's a big example of architectural cabinetry that made a space. This is a wonderful example. There is no way furniture does this. You can't put a bed in there. You can't put a cabinet in there. You can't put a desk in there and expect it to work. There's no way. It has to actually be built up, and it's all interior and it's all cabinetry. Next. So after that, they do the interior tech, and the next semester they're doing in junior year, it's in kind of interiors year. They do a couple projects. The students have done stores, or in this case, this is a mini restaurant. Next image, or exhibit design. For several years, we participated in the exhibit designers and producers competition for Launch Your Career in Exhibit Design. That was a great vehicle. Our students next were winning in that competition. This was a winner one year. It was this, all the exhibit components, projections, which within these kind of tubular shapes. Next. Architecture. So materials and methods of architecture. They go out and see stuff. Here they are next at the Hill House. This is a well-known project in Los Angeles by Johnston Mark Lee. What I always love about sort of showing this image, it's only the women students that went in. Seriously, actually. There they are. That's a teacher. Okay, that's a teacher. Greg Kochanowski, who's an architect and also trained as an engineer. So they go out and look at this stuff, and what the students do in that architecture tech, building tech class is they do fleshing out the box. So they completely frame in concrete, wood, and steel a box shape of different configurations. So the spans so we can see that the spans can be different with different material, etc. Next. And then we move on to a series, a kind of up on the roof, downtown LA, and next view. And they really modified the existing building. The next three projects were all, and there's a detail of that, the next three projects were all within the same building. So here's Trong, I think this was Trong Gui's project, next. David Orkin again, he had a great sense of humor. He populated this project with Barbie dolls and did a plug-in. Very interested in Asian stuff. So David Orkin graduated in 2003. He went to Princeton, graduated from Princeton with a Master of Architecture, went to Tokyo, worked for Atelier Bauau. Then he went to Madrid and worked for Mancia at Ituno. He's back in Tokyo doing a doctorate fellowship with ITT and working for Atelier Bauau as well. Next image. He did plugins. He had a complete catalog of everything. He plugged in on the side, plug in the pool. The Barbie dolls next. Chika Ito concentrated on the curtain wall. That was a moire of patterns next, and the interior components. Padded floor that was storage as well, flipped up for projection screens next. This is another, not exactly the same year, but the same project. A different student had a multi-story apartment that was connected by skylight next. This project, this was claustrophoria, the ecstasy of spatial thinness, 6.85 width of an apartment that's 150 feet long. How do you do that? Open fry, you build it in. It's got to be like a camper. You walk on one side and everything else is built in on the other side. And he cut through the facade and had landscape components on the roof. Next. Then the students do an infill building. So we move from working with existing building, changing an existing building with interior architecture, and then in senior year they do infill, dealing with light and air from the front, back, and top, and dealing with the context. In this case, this project was in Venice, on the Venice boardwalk. So the arcade, the rhythmic arcade, is reinterpreted in this building by a Sami. I think this is a Sami Tachikawa. Next image. And it's for a gym in Venice. Next. Different version, art gallery in Culver City. Art gallery that really is aggressively out in the street, projecting art into the street. Next image, also pulling people into the landscape. You know, also exterior components are within the sort of building shell. Next. And a real simple, minimal museum by, again, David Orkin, his Japanese sensibility. Next. The final project is building and landscape. So landscape comes back, not building that looks like landscape, not a building with grass on the roof, building with integrated landscape components. That's what we ask our students to do, and each year they go on a field trip. So that project was sited somewhere else. In this case, Desert Hot Springs, next. which is desert hot. It is a desert, yeah. And it was, this is winter studio, so it's kind of cold. This was in January, so there they are. That's the site. What do you do with that site? This is always a challenge in our professions, in architecture in particular. You know, interiors, you have a boundary. You're inside. Right? You already have a boundary. In architecture is how do you stop something? You know, how do you turn a corner? How do you stop? What are the edges? Next. This is a great solution. Well, you just develop stripes. You just develop strips for, and it was for a spa, guest rooms, etc. So the building component, water, grass. Next. Another one, it was a compound, a field of strips that were tight, close together. Next. Integrating the pool and landscape pieces. Next. And this is Seattle. So 2 years ago, our students went to Seattle. Great place to go to look at precedents, the Seattle Public Library. Does anybody know about that? My favorite building ever. I still think it's the greatest building in the, yeah.
Can any of y'all tell her who the architect is? Come on.
My favorite architect, too. Rent Koolhaus. OMA. Google it. You've got to Google it. It truly is the most sort of amazing. It's interesting outside, but the inside is phenomenal. I spent 2 full days in it. You can just hang out in this space. When you're in the Seattle Public Library, you are in the city. You are seeing the city because it is a structural skin. There's been a lot of projects that have structural skins recently. This is like a great one. This is a student's project. This is Natasha, another Natasha. There's Natalia Polonina, and this was Natasha Ponamoro. Very close, very different. This one incorporated the climate of Seattle. A lot of rain, a lot of water. So there were cuts in the building that brought light down to beneath the building, which was open and collected water, as well as there's water collection components in this landscape, the terrace landscape. Next. Different students project for the Seattle that had a garden inside. Next. 1 year, the students went to Tucson and toured the Air Force Maintenance, AMARC, the Air Force Maintenance and Regeneration Center. Wes Jones taught that. He's a well-known architect in Los Angeles. Next. So this was a museum, an airplane museum. Next. And the interior. That happens after, this one. That happens after the students have had, obviously, well, maybe back up one. There's no way, there's no way. This is not an image, right? This is not an image. You know, what we do in these disciplines is you get this image by fully developing it and choosing the sizes. He's choosing the sizes of the structural components, drawing them, putting it together. It's not just a view, it's a proposal, right? But it has this level of complexity because he's made all those choices, right? So that comes after building tech. He has to have some understanding of span and, steel pieces, etc. Next. That final semester, when the students are doing building and landscape, we also do our favorite thing. The seniors always do a full-scale spatial installation of some sort. Otis overall has something that used to be called Senior Show. Now it's called Class of whatever year the graduating is. Class of whatever show, and that's kind of modeled after the BFA shows in fine arts. We have a strong fine arts program at Otis. At one point, many years back, everyone said, well, we all have to do it. We all get a BFA show. So that became, when I started, I said, well, this is an opportunity for our students to actually make something, to make their exhibit be what we do.